shit. Oh shit, man.
A normal sunny day, USGS registers an earthquake, and then this, something's off. It doesn't make sense. And I found out what does not make sense. Watch that video first, because this is the first angle that shows you what happened further down. I mean, that's already terrifying, guys. Absolutely terrifying what is happening there. People were caught completely by surprise. They didn't know what was coming. And then you see, I mean, the people that are down there, it is covered by that huge building. I mean, would you expect this on a day like this? We can call this a surprise flash flood, Nepal Himalayan flood. But there is so much more to the story, and I'm going to show you this from different angles, from different locations, crazy images. It's surprising how many people filmed it. People down by the river that didn't know what was coming. People up there on the mountains screaming at them, get away, come up here. A wall of water, mud and rock and ice has just ripped through northern Nepal, leaving a mystery, but we'll clear this up in this video, I promise. This flash flood has buried vehicles and buildings so deeply that in some places only the upper floors of multi-story buildings were left visible. And what makes this disaster so strange is what happened immediately before it. So there was no heavy rainfall in the affected Rasuwa region on Tuesday or on Wednesday, nothing. So people were going to work, the morning appeared normal. And then approximately at 8:37 in the morning, the seismic instruments that are everywhere in this area, because it is a highly active and dangerous seismic area, they detected what the USGS initially identified as a magnitude 4.4 earthquake near the Nepal Tibet border. So did the earthquake trigger a landslide? But that massive, a 4.4, less than half an hour later, guys, something else happened. At around 9 a.m., the Bhotekoshi River suddenly exploded downstream. So basically half an hour after that earthquake. But while I was researching this event for you, something very important changed. And that caught my attention. And that's why I say this is crazy. The USGS went back and reviewed that supposedly 4.4 magnitude earthquake. And right now, it is no longer classified as an earthquake. And now it's classified as something. Have you ever heard about anything like this in that wording, in that classification? It is now listed as a magnitude 5.2, not earthquake, landslide. So that changes everything, the entire definition, but also the entire question that we have in our head. What caused this? Did an earthquake destabilize this mountain and trigger the disaster? Or did the mountain itself collapse with such an enormous force that seismic stations initially mistook the signal for an earthquake? Because scientists are looking at satellite images right now, and they're now seeing something high in the Himalaya mountains that could explain how a normal-looking morning turned into this disaster within minutes. And the ones that watch my channel, have watched my channel for over a year, you now have Blatten in your head. You think about Blatten, right? Let me know. I mean, I've worked in geology for over 18 years of drilling, analyzing, drill core, rock samples, across North America, South America, Europe, China, Mongolia. And when I saw the timing here together within what happened to this river, this immediately got my attention because this is steep, mountainous terrain. And when something like this happens on a sunny day, with no monsoon rain the days before, you're thinking about something completely different, because this is definitely not a river that was gradually rising and then after hours of rain and then coming down. No, this appears to have been, how we call it, a cascading geological disaster. So, and the source of all of this was far further upstream from the destruction that we're seeing in these videos in Nuwakot. But we have videos that are filmed from further upstream as well. I'm showing you all the videos that are there and also the videos about the aftermath. So the first reports of this disaster placed that supposed magnitude 4.4 earthquake near the border with Tibet, roughly 100 kilometers, around 60 miles north of Kathmandu. If you saw that earthquake appear on the USGS map earlier, you probably saw it. It was there. So the original automated solution that happens in that case placed it at 28.55 degrees north, 85.54 degrees east, with a calculated depth of roughly 10 kilometers or 6 miles. But after reviewing the signal, the USGS changed that event substantially. It's now classified as a magnitude 5.2 landslide at essentially zero depth, right? That makes sense. Approximately 66 kilometers or 41 miles northeast of Kathmandu. And of course, the solution that we say zero depth, that is important because enormous rock falls, ice avalanches, or landslides can produce seismic waves. We know that. So if there is a mass that is large enough, when it hits the ground, it can be recorded tens or even hundreds of miles or kilometers away from it. So initially, if you have an automated earthquake system, it can detect that vibration and think that is tectonic movement. So that appears to what has happened here when the 4.4 popped up initially on the USGS map. So high above the communities that were later devastated, the scientists now believe that an enormous mass of ice and rock came down from a glacier and entered the river, the Lhende Khola River. That is a tributary that is feeding the Bhotekoshi river system. So it is similar to what happened to Blatten. It is. Preliminary satellite images that we have right now show something that is extremely important, extremely important. The debris appears to have blocked the river approximately 20 kilometers, 12 miles upstream of the Metairie Bridge. So imagine what happens next. We do have that ice, rock, and sediment that is crashing into like a steep Himalayan river valley that caused the earthquake. The river is then suddenly obstructed. But water, of course, continues arriving from upstream, but it cannot escape normally. So a temporary lake begins forming behind this natural dam, right? It's a natural dam. Pressure is building up. And then, eventually, that temporary dam fails and sends down everything at once. That stored water is suddenly released downstream together with the material that created that blockage in the first place. So now you no longer have just water. You have water that is carrying the mud, gravel, big boulders, trees, ice, and enormous quantities of sediment. So this distinction explains the images that we're seeing later coming out of Nepal. I mean, the buildings were not merely flooded, they were buried by this. The mud reached what appears to be like at least the second floors of some buildings in Nuwakot. Trucks and vans appeared almost completely beneath the sediment. I mean, think about Bloodon, right? Debris was left hanging from trees, from power lines. People who survived, they emerged covered in mud, like end of days scenario, and entire section of the river valley suddenly looked as though it does look like this wet concrete had been like poured through them. We have heard from Nepalese hydrologists that have specifically said that if this had been clear water alone, the destruction would not have reached this level. That makes sense. The debris has completely transformed this flood. And there's one measurement, guys, that I need to tell you about that shows how violent that transformation became. If we're looking downstream on the Trishuli River at Galchi, the water reportedly rose by as much as 9 meters in approximately 30 minutes. So 9 meters, that is almost 30 feet. Almost 30 feet. So at Maleku, the increase was around 7 meters. That's approximately 27 feet over a similar period. So guys, this is an extraordinary flood wave. This is like a tsunami wall. And that explains why people had almost no time to get away. One resident in Nuwakot described preparing to go to work. So within about half an hour, the market was devastated and gone. That is the danger of this type of event. And you can have blue sky over your head. It doesn't matter. You can have no torrential rainfall coming around you. The river can appear manageable, but dozens of miles upstream, something catastrophic can already have happened. Unfortunately, nobody understood what that 4.4 earthquake really meant. And then the flood wave was coming. The Bhotekoshi flows through this narrow mountain corridor before it's feeding the Trishuli. And then the Trishuli continues downstream towards the Narani system. Lots of flooding there, rivers there. This is why authorities have warned people not only along the Bhotekoshi, but also along the Trishuli and Narayani rivers to move away from the riverbanks, right? The destruction has followed that river corridor. Rasuwa was hit first, and other areas farther downstream, including Nuwakot and Dhading. So the highway running through these valleys is unfortunately one of Nepal's critical connections towards the Tibetan border and the Langtang region. These valleys in general have a geological problem. The very thing that makes them useful for transportation corridors also makes them extraordinarily vulnerable because they are so narrow and they are so steep. And when we are dealing with millions of tons of rocks and ice and water and sediment that are suddenly forced through them, there is almost nowhere for that material to spread out because of the steep walls, right? So it's racing downstream with an enormous speed. Right now, we know that at least 19 bridges have been swept away. Almost 40 kilometers, that's roughly 25 miles of road, is destroyed or severely damaged. Nepal's Department of Roads has reported that the entire 42-kilometer route between Betravati and Rasuwagadhi border crossing had been damaged at multiple locations. Hydropower facilities were hit. Communications are severed. Road access has disappeared. Rescuers are suddenly trying to reach people in valleys where the infrastructure is needed to reach them had been completely destroyed, so they don't know what's going on in these valleys. And unfortunately, the human toll is changing rapidly while I'm recording this. Latest reporting puts the number at least 165, but hundreds are still reported missing. Nepalese authorities reported, unfortunately, also hundreds of tourists missing and pilgrims, as well as local residents, police officers, and workers. I heard for Canada, at least 25 Canadians are missing. many people were traveling through the area or trekking in the Himalayan region. So, and on the Tibetan side of the border, the Chinese authorities are also reporting enormous numbers of missing people around the Gyirong County. So those numbers, we always know with these disasters, with the sudden disasters, they will go up as we speak. Final scale of this disaster may not be known for some time. So they're definitely not as lucky as Bluton, because there they saw it coming. But there's another reason why authorities are so and remain concerned right now. The first collapse may not have removed everything that is blocking the upper river. So scientists are examining the area right now, and they reported that there is another blockage. So if water accumulates again behind that blockage, another sudden release is possible. So for rescue teams that are down there searching, this can be highly, highly dangerous, right? That's why the warnings are active downstream after the first devastating wave has already passed. And there is an uncomfortable history here as well that I want to tell you about. The same Lhende Khola drainage has suffered another destructive sudden flood only last year. So the event was linked also to a glacial lake outburst near the border. So now the same river system has produced another catastrophic surge. Gosh, I wish they had installed more surveillance systems or something, or had understood faster what that 4.4 could have meant, right? Apparently, last year was a little bit of a different mechanism. It was an ice rock avalanche, temporary debris dam, and then sudden failure. So, but that tells us something important about these Himalayan valleys. The danger doesn't have to begin with rain. Doesn't necessarily have to begin with an earthquake either. The Himalayas, I want to tell you this, there are extremely young mountains. They're steep and they're tectonically active mountain ranges that are still being created by the active collision of the Indian and Eurasian plates. So that landscape is fractured. The slopes are enormous. We have glaciers and frozen material that basically sits thousands of meters above narrow inhabited valleys, and when a huge part of that system fails, and it will eventually again and again, gravity is what initiates these dangerous chain reactions. The physical trigger of this right now is still under investigation, and the seismic mystery still remains extremely important. Some early reports still reported as earthquake triggered avalanche, because that magnitude 4.4 appeared exactly where the disaster began, right? We don't know how large was that temporary lake that forced the temporary dam to collapse. But the most important question, how much unstable material is still sitting upstream? I will keep you updated about this, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Our prayers go out to everyone affected, and we hope that they find the missing people alive. So thanks for watching, guys. There's so much going on also here. If you watch that video in the end screen, which is kind of crazy, with that tornado in Europe where you don't think something like this happened. Insane pictures, and that tornado really looks scary. So check it out, guys. I see you there. Bye-bye.